For a fleeting moment in history, maybe 75 years tops, three legendary kings ruled over a united Israel. It was this brief, brilliant flash, a real blinking you'll miss it period. But what it created, the legacy it forged, well, that has shaped our world for more than 3,000 years. Today, we're going to dig into how it all happened. Okay, so let's break this down. You've got three huge figures, Saul, David, and Solomon. You've got the birth of this powerful, unified kingdom. And then you have the construction of the legendary First Temple. So, how did all these different pieces snap together to create one of the most enduring stories in history? Let's unpack that.
First things first. To really get why the monarchy even started, we have to look at what was going on before anyone wore a crown. You have to ask, what was the situation on the ground that made everyone think, you know what we need? A king. And this really shows you this stark contrast. Before the whole monarchy thing, the tribes of Israel were basically a loose network of communities. They were scattered, they were independent, and they didn't have any real central leadership. This left them fractured and, honestly, a pretty easy target for their powerful neighbors. So the goal, the big driving idea of the time, was to forge all these tribes into one strong nation under a single leader. And that's where our story really kicks off. This is the kingdom's first real shot at unity, and it starts with its very first king. So let's take a look at the reign of King Saul, an era we could definitely call a tragic start. Saul's place in this story is absolutely crucial, mainly because he was the first. He was the guy chosen to lead this brand new political experiment, to take all those scattered tribes and start trying to mold them into a real nation. But man, Saul's reign was just a constant uphill battle. He was getting squeezed by military pressure from rivals like the Philistines, and at the same time, he was struggling to get these fiercely independent tribes who weren't used to a central boss to actually follow him. On top of all that, his own personal issues and his clashes with the prophet Samuel just kept chipping away at his authority. It was flawed, it was tragic, but it was an absolutely necessary first step. It proved that for this kingdom to actually work, they were going to need a whole different kind of leader. All right, so let's move on to the next chapter here. Because after all that chaos with Saul, a new leader steps onto the scene, one who learned from those early mistakes. Enter King David, the man who would truly forge the kingdom. Yeah, if Saul sort of laid the messy groundwork, David was the master architect. His central role in this whole story is that of the great unifier. He was the king who had the political smarts and the military genius to finally pull the northern and southern tribes together into one nation. So how'd he pull it off? Well, his rise was just a masterclass in strategy. First, he gets a firm grip on power. Then, he does what Saul never really could. He unites all the tribes. But his masterstroke, the real game-changing move, was conquering a new neutral city to be his capital. And that city, of course, was Jerusalem. This decision was just a stroke of political genius. See, Jerusalem didn't belong to any of the major tribes, so it was neutral ground. Nobody could accuse him of playing favorites. By setting up his capital there, he created a center of power everyone could rally around. It became the political and the religious heart of the new united monarchy. Okay, so the kingdom is unified. It's got a capital. The stage is set for the kingdom to reach its absolute peak. And that brings us to David's son and successor, King Solomon, and the kingdom's golden age. Solomon's reign was all about peace and his, legendary wisdom. He used that stability to build up incredible wealth through trade and alliances. But he used all that prosperity for what would become his most enduring legacy. He became the builder, launching these massive construction projects that completely transformed the kingdom. And right at the heart of all his ambitious building plans was one single monumental goal: to create what you see here, a house for the spirit of a nation. We are, of course, talking about the First Temple. Building it was a monumental effort that spanned generations. Solomon inherited the vision from his father, David. He then gathered an unbelievable amount of resources, materials, and labor to finally construct this incredible holy site. But here's the twist. This amazing achievement also planted the seeds for future problems. The heavy taxes and forced labor he needed for his projects eventually caused a lot of discontent. So the temple is built. The kingdom is at its zenith, but it doesn't last. After these three kings, the whole thing splits apart. And that's what's truly amazing, the legacy that this brief union left behind. Because when you really look at the timeline, The entire United Monarchy was around for only about 75 years. That's it. In the grand sweep of history, that is nothing. It is a flash in the pan.
And yet, the foundations it laid are still with us today. The very idea of a united kingdom would echo through Jewish history for centuries. The establishment of Jerusalem as a singular holy city, that would change the course of 3 world religions. And the concept of the temple as the central place of worship became a cornerstone of faith. These weren't just buildings or borders, they were powerful ideas that profoundly shaped the future. So the big takeaway here is this. The kingdom itself might have been temporary, but its legacy, its ideas, were permanent. Which leaves us with one final, powerful question to think about. How did this brief, 75-year union of 3 kings manage to cast such a long shadow and shape history for millennia to come?